We're about to come on to the final and the most important part of the evening, and that's where you all network and talk together about things you are going to do together. But before we do that, I talked a little bit at the start about what we are going to do. I told you we're going to hold events like this every month. I said we're going to cluster EdTech companies here in the Bandwidth Barn, and that we are going to take the entrepreneurs with the biggest ideas for technology and education and take them through Africa's first EdTech dedicated incubator program. I just want to speak briefly about why we are doing that. Because I think when you tell people that we had nearly 500 people sign up to come this evening, if you look around Cape Town and all the things there are to do on a summer's evening, I think to some people it might be a bit odd that nearly 500 people instead wanted to come here and talk about how to raise standards in education using technology. But I think that reflects something which has been right at the front of the conversations I've had with South Africans across South Africa over the last year. And that's that this is a country which is at a bit of a crossroads. And education is going to be the thing that determines whether it goes in the right direction. And I know that sometimes it can be hard to be optimistic about education in South Africa. For example, we all know that if you don't learn to read, you cannot read to learn. So it's hard to be optimistic when 58% of grade 4s can't read for meaning and 29% can't read at all. We also all know that a high school education is the absolute basic to succeed in the modern world. But the true matric pass rate is only 40%, which means that 60% of kids are being let down by the education system that is meant to secure their future. And it is really hard to be optimistic when the response, as Nigel said so often to this, is that the soft bigotry of low expectations is so kind of ingrained in the system that people's response is to lower pass rates or reduce the rigor of curriculum and exams. And I think then you consider that the challenges in South Africa, they are just the tip of the iceberg on a continent where 70% of children in rural areas never go to school, 2/3 of children in other African countries don't finish secondary school, and youth unemployment averages over 60%. And then I think you do what I and the Yale team did yesterday, and you go to places like Chris Hani Secondary School or COSAT Academy in Kailicha. You hear presentations like the ones we heard tonight. Because there are a few better places for reaffirming your optimism than great schools operating in challenging areas. And I think, again, as Nigel said, sometimes people make out that the role of EdTech is to replace bricks and mortar schools or to replace human teachers, as if, it's an either-or choice between great classroom teaching and great education technology. I just think that is the ultimate false dichotomy. So to everyone here who teaches in an early years setting, in a school, in a TVET or a university, we are right behind you. We just want to widen and deepen what you do. Because the power of technology is that you can go from 0 to 1 further and faster than you ever thought was possible. And that's why when I look at the advances that are getting made in education technology, I look at the entrepreneurs and the innovations, not just on stage tonight, but the other people who've come to see me. I look at the fact that, nearly 500 people come to a meetup like this. I don't just reaffirm my optimism about South Africa. I actually wonder whether just raising standards here is a goal that is big enough or bold enough. Because the great thing about technology is that if you open source content in a way that works in Kailicha, you can easily take that to Kinshasa or Kigali. If you preload direct instruction in a way that works in the Eastern Cape, you've just solved rural education challenges, an arc stretching from Angola to Ethiopia. And if you can invent an app or a game that can teach kids to read, that's going to work just as well in poor communities in Johannesburg as it can work in those beset by civil war in Sudan or torn apart by disease in Sierra Leone. The power of technology, I think, means that it is the developing world that will lead the developed on education technology. And that's why I think if we can just get the best entrepreneurs, the best innovations here into this EdTech cluster, and we can back them with the right funding and the right support, we can lay a touch paper of innovation that is going to spread right across the continent. Because it is not going to be big businesses or big bureaucracies or big government that realizes the potential of technology in education. It is going to be teachers and entrepreneurs and people like you in this room. So with that, let's get on with the most important part of the evening, which is everyone here talking about the way you are going to work together to send this continent and this country in the right direction. Thank you very much for coming, and see you next time.